Hi everyone. Today we're going to take the minimal amount of materials we've ever used to create this adorable magnet using lyrics from Stargazing. So, let's make this. The materials we'll need for today's project are a light grip and a strong grip mat. So the light blue one and a purple one. It's worth investing in both of those as well as having your regular mat. Then we've got a magnetic sheet. I got this one from Shiploads down here in Tasmania, but you can buy this at Spotlight. You can buy these online as well. I've got some masking tape that you will definitely need. I've got some self-adhesive laminate sheets that I got from Amazon. And then I've got a deep point blade, which I also got from Amazon. You can buy the Cricut ones. For today's project, we're going to start in Google. I'm going to do a Google search for skeletons in love cute because the lyric I am using is from the song called Stargazing. And I am going to use the line, love me to my bones. Once I do the Google search, I'm going to choose the images tab up the top, and then I'm going to get a whole heap of images. Now I'm looking for an image that has not got any watermark on it, which is when an artist or a company will put really faint words over the top, which are fine if you're just looking at them. But when you're trying to use it for a project like this, if we print that, those words will appear. So you can see here with these two little guys, if I right click and save in a new folder and then I reopen it, you'll see that it's got PNG written all over it, which I don't want in my final design. So this is not going to be a good one to use. So I found this little guy. Now I'm going to use him because he doesn't have that gothic feel. He's quite cute. He's very cartoonish, and I feel like I can manipulate things to fit around him quite easily. So just to make sure I don't have the watermark, I'm actually going to have a look at that image in a separate tab. That way I can have a look and I can zoom in a little bit better if I need to. Once you click on the one that you like, you'll notice that you've got the large image on the right-hand side. Then I'm going to right-click over the top of that large image, and I'm going to click on Open Image in New Tab. When that happens, you'll get a large version or a small version, depending on the size of the file that you have chosen, but you'll see it in a new tab. Now, we're looking for one that takes up a fair amount of space, which this guy really does. So this one is going to be the perfect image for me for this project. Now we're going to just right click and save our image. Make sure you save it in a folder that you will remember. And then we're going to head on over to Canva. Now that we're in Canva, we're going to create a design. It's going to be our regular square 12 by 12 inch design that I use because that's the size of our mats that we use in Cricut. And I'm going to start by finding the heart that I want to add to this design. So I'm going to go to Elements and I'm going to type in heart. Now I'm looking for a graphic heart, and I want it to be obviously one that is not animated, and I want it to be a bit of a drawing rather than just a solid heart. Then I'm going to go into Uploads and I'm going to find the skeleton we just downloaded from Google Images, and it will appear on the left hand side, and all you have to do is click on it and then it will appear on your canvas. So I'm going to resize it, and then I'm going to send it to the back because it's a full image. It doesn't have a transparent background. And then I'm going to manipulate the heart. Now, I'm trying to work out whether or not I want it to take over the whole of the body, but I think if we start at where the heart should be, and then I might do a little duplicate. So it's like our heart fluttering or moving or trying to give our heart to someone else. I'm trying to be conceptual. I'm not very conceptual, but we'll see how we go with this. So I think that looks quite cute. It's looking like the design is starting to come together. Now I'm going to look for some stars. The song I am taking the lyrics from is called Stargazing by Miles someone. It's a newish song. It's quite popular. And so because the stars graphics can be very animated, I've gone up to the right-hand side and clicked on the filter and changed it to static images. So I'm just going to do a bit of a scroll to find the stars that I'm after. So I'm going to go for these stars that look like they're going to be hanging from the ceiling. So I want them to kind of hang around our little skeleton guy. So I'm going to duplicate, because rather than making it larger, which means I will still only have 3 stars, if I duplicate and then go up the top left and click on flip and flip it horizontally, what I can then create is some kind of falling stars situation. So now I'm going to go into Google Images to find a color palette. I know this might sound odd, but follow with me and I'll show you what I mean. I really love using colors that work together, but sometimes I'm not sure if the colors I'm choosing are working, and sometimes I can't find the right colors in those millions of hex colors that are available for us to use on our computers. So what I do is I go into Google Images and I type in color palette. And if I was looking for food, I'd type in color palette food. If I'm trying to find something for trucks, I type in color palette trucks. This time I'm going to do a color palette stars. And I'm looking for a color palette. So all of those lined images are all color palettes that you can choose from that have been put together by different websites, because there's heaps and heaps of websites that actually will do this for you based on different categories. But rather than trying to go to a website and still not being able to find it, I just go to Google Images, because we're not actually going to use this image in our design as such. We're just going to be using the coloring of these images in our design. So I'm looking for one that kind of conveys a bit of a love story, as well as something that reminds you of looking at the stars and doing some stargazing. So I'm going to choose this one. Now I'm just going to right click. I'm going to click on it to make it a large image. Then I'm going to right click and I'm just going to go to copy image. And then I'm going straight back to Canva and I'm going to right click and I'm going to paste. Now that block comes up. It's ugly, I get it, but there's a really cool trick to use these colors. So if I right click on the box and choose apply colors to the design, what you can see it does is actually change all of the elements that we have on our page that can have a color manipulation. It will change those colors, including the background, so that it matches some, if not all, of the colors in your color palette. Now, it hasn't done anything to the skeleton, because the skeleton was an image we took from Google Images. So it's not one of the elements that is taken from Canva. It is something that we've imported. So it actually doesn't mess with that image as such. It will just change the colors of everything else. So if you wanted the skeleton to change color, unfortunately, you're not in luck here. You might have to go into Design Space and find a skeleton that you like instead. Now I'm finding that skeleton to be a little bit off-putting. So what I'm going to do is actually delete that from our design. It stays in our uploads folder. Just because you delete it from the canvas, it still stays there. So you can drop this into this current project or one that you do later on as well. Now, I don't love the color of the hearts. I want the color of the hearts to actually be the pink in our color palette. So if I click on each of those heart elements, I can go to the left-hand side and see photo colors there. I can choose the colors from the color palette photo. And if I wanted to, I could do the same with the stars, but really all I want to do is just change that background to white. And now I can import my skeleton back in and I can right click layer and send to the back, and I can move that around. I can change the size so it fits back into our original design. So now I'm going to add my text. I'm going to just start on a second page, and I'm going to leave the image of the color palette there because I'm going to use that color palette again in our text. Now I am going to use lyrics from Miles Smith. I couldn't remember his last name before, but Miles Smith, Stargazing. You can use any song, any quote, whatever you like. I'm going to use Love Me to My Bones. And then I'm going to do a search for a font. Now, the great thing about doing stickers is you can use any of those fonts that you can't use when you are doing vinyl because they've got too many little notches or too many dots or things like that that you can't weed very well. With stickers, you can use any font you like. So I'm going to stick with Beth Ellen. Now's a great time for you to scroll through and find a font that you like. But I'm going to use Beth Ellen because I always want to use it, but it's not a very good one to weed with. I'm just going to now manipulate this text. So I want it to go double lined. I don't want it to be one line. And I want the spacing to be a little bit closer. So I'm just click on the arrow with the 3 lines next to it and just change that line spacing a little bit. And then I'm going to change the color. So I'm going to change the color to the purple. So I'm using the light pink, I'm using the green, and now I just want to use the purple from my image. So if I just click on the A with the colored line underneath, you can see that the purple is still there because I've still got that image on that second page. So I can just choose that. And then we can hit share. So when we share, we're going to share and we're going to download a PNG. This would be a great time to have Pro version to get that transparent background, but that's okay. We can work with it because we can take out that background in Design Space. Now in Design Space, we've got a new project and we're going to upload image on the left-hand side. Now, when you get your PNG from Canva, it will be a zip file. You need to extract that. So you double click if you're an Apple user, or you right click and do extract all if you are a PC user. Now we're going to remove the background. We only need to remove the background that are around the stars and the hearts and the skeleton. You don't need all of the rib bits. The reason being is because we're turning this into a sticker. So we don't need to worry about trying to change the inside of our image, just the outside. Now that has appeared on our canvas, we're just going to make it a little bit smaller just so that we can see it for the moment. And then we're going to follow that same process with our text. We're going to upload the file and then we need to go in and delete the background. This time I am going to go in between each of those letters, so the O's and the E's. And the L's even. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to delete all of the insides of those, mainly because I don't think it's going to be cohesive with the design if I don't. We'll have these quite white dots everywhere. So I'm going to go through that process and then we can start actually putting it together. All right, now that it has uploaded both my text and my skeleton, you can see on the right hand side there is a yellow warning over the font or over the text. That's just because it's saying it's too big for the print and cut area, so you have to just make it smaller, which I've done, and now you can see that the yellow's disappeared. All right, now I'm just going to add an offset to the Love Me to My Bones, because at the moment it runs into the bones of the skeleton and you can't read it. So I've got a curly font and then I've got this drawing of a skeleton. So the font doesn't stand up off the skeleton. So I've just added a 0.1 offset and you can see that the contour does not appear. If you wanted to get rid of the the circle inside the O or anything like that, the contour is not there. If you wanted to, you could actually change the operation. You'd have to change it to a basic cut. So up the top there where it says print then cut on the left, you'd have to click on the down arrow and then you could change it to a basic cut and then you could do a contour if you wanted to. Now, you can see that the red warning's gone, but the yellow warning is still there. That is telling us that the image that we have, the skeleton with the hearts and the stars, is low resolution and it will print poorly. I have had many of these warnings, and not once have, when I've printed it, has it come out as a poor quality image. If you are worried, do a practice print first, especially if you have gone to the effort of choosing an image that is quite large from Google Images in particular, and then you've shrunk it down. Most of the time it prints perfectly. I haven't had an issue. And if you have, let me know in the comments below and tell me what size you started with, because that's the most important part, is the size that you start with for your image. But most of the time I have chosen to ignore that and it has worked out fine. So it's up to you. See how you go. So I'm just going to change that offset to white, just because I think the black is just too much against that black skeleton. And now I'm going to put a background around that skeleton. So I'm going to choose the square that's got the rounded edges. And I think a good size for a magnet is probably about 10 centimeters, either in width or in height, like a rectangle shape. So I'm going to I've unlocked it up the top to change the height to 10. And I think the size of the skeleton isn't a perfect, it's not a rectangle that's recognizable. So if I change the height, again, unlocking it first, change the height of the skeleton, then to 10. Actually, I might change that. I'll make it 9.5 so it can fit inside that 10 centimeters rectangle. And then if I move it over and then I change the size of the rectangle based on the image. So I want the rectangle to be behind the skeleton. And then I'm just going to drag it in. So you can see it's about 5 points, it's about 6 as a width. And the width of the image is 5.7 or something. So now if I highlight all of it and then I align it, I want it to align centered. Oh, actually, I might change the color of the background. Yeah, I'll change the color of the background to black, just so that everything pops up off it. Now we're going to save our project and then hit make. And we're going to choose on matte to start that process. So after I've done the first print on the paper, I've realized that Love Me to My Bones, even though it looks pretty good on the screen, actually the words aren't big enough. They actually meld into the skeleton. So I've just gone back in to my design space and I have unflattened the image. So I just click on the skeleton image. I go down to the right hand side and click on unflatten. Now I'm just resizing it just because I think it'll look a little bit better. Making sure to re-flatten the image. So after I've resized it and I've played around with the coloring and decided on a coloring, I'm just going to make sure that I select the whole image, the skeleton, the background, and the wording or the text, and then hit on flatten again on that right hand side. You'll see here that I've actually duplicated the rectangle that is behind the skeleton. The reason that I've done that is because we need a magnet shape for the Cricut to cut out. So you're going to make sure that you duplicate the rectangle shape that is behind the skeleton, but instead of it being a print and cut, you're going to go up to operations at the top on the left-hand side of the menu there, and you are going to change it from a print then cut to a basic cut, because it's just going to cut straight out of that magnetic sheet. And then I'm going to remake. So I am just going to do another print in the exact same way. When we go into make, we don't need to mirror or anything like that. We're going to hit send to printer. And we're going to make sure the bleed is left on. And we're going to click on system dialog. Now, For apples, the system dialog appears behind design space. For PCs, it should just appear in the front. And you just make sure that you've got a color print. And if we were using a cardstock or something else, you might change the material. Now, once we've done that and we've printed it, we then need to go into the materials component, and we're going to set the base material to medium cardstock. The reason we're going to do that is because we're going to put our self-adhesive laminate over the top, and so that isn't just copy paper now, it is now a little bit thicker. It's not really heavy, so we don't choose the heavy cardstock. We can just choose that medium cardstock, which is that 200 or so GSM. Now we're going to add our adhesive laminate to our skeleton image. So we're going to cut a piece of the laminate that is smaller than the square that's created by the registration lines. So the registration lines are the black thick lines that are around the outside of the image that we have printed. The reason we want the laminate to be inside those registration lines is because when the Cricut reads those registration lines, it's looking to work out where we have to cut, not where we have to cut. It's looking for where the machine has to cut. Now, if we cover those, and you can cover those, however, what tends to happen is that the light that's inside the machine that is being used to find those registration lines reflects off. And what happens is it reflects back. So the Cricut actually has a lot of trouble trying to find those registration lines if you put the laminate over the top. The other reason, the thrifty reason, is just to save yourself some laminate, because the laminate's not cheap and you don't need to cover that whole piece of paper just for that small design. So cut it smaller, place it over the top. So once I've placed it over the top, I'm going to run my scraper to make sure it sticks down nice and fine without bubbles. And if I got a bubble, I just have to reprint, because you can't really save it. It's not like when we put it on our acrylic designs or glass designs where you can just lift it up and put it back down. With this one, you've got to make sure you don't have any bubbles from the start, because it's just over paper, and if you lift it, the paper will come up. Then when you put it on the mat, make sure that you are as accurate as possible. Keep the paper in that corner, because that is what it is the machine is expecting. So make sure that you have it as straight and as accurate as possible. Now we're going to put it inside the machine, and let's see how we go with our registration lines. So you can see here that the machine is not reading my registration lines. This is not because my laminate is over the top of the registration lines. This time, this is how finicky it can be trying to get those registration lines. And this is one reason why people get very frustrated with the sticker process, but you got to just stick with it, because it does turn out great. But the reason this time why the registration lines weren't being read is because I'm trying to do this at nighttime, and I don't have a great light on my work table at the moment, and it's just the overhead light. So what's happening is the registration lines can't be seen properly by the machine. So to fix that, I've got myself a little, like a ring light, and I'm going to place that over near the machine, and you'll see now that I've got that near the machine, it can see the registration lines better. Even better, this one that I have reprinted, which has got the bigger text on it, I'm doing it in the daytime, and you can see perfect. First time it has cut immediately. So the more light you have in your space, the better it is. Making sure that nothing is reflecting on those registration lines, but also making sure that you've got an overhead light or some kind of light inside the room that you are working on will make sure that those registration lines are read properly. Now that we've cut out the top part of our magnet, make sure you, just like we would with cardstock or with vinyl, flip your mat over and then let gravity do a bit more of the work. So you can see it looks really good. It's cut out perfectly. So our next step is to now cut our magnet. So when you go into the materials section of our make menu, you're going to click on browse all materials and then type in magnet. There'll be a number of different options, about 3. And for this project, I'm going to choose 1.0 mil magnet, mainly because I don't know what the actual thickness is. Unless it says it on there, I reckon you're better off going for the thicker option, mainly because then you know there's a better chance of it cutting all the way through. Then you'll notice that it actually tells you that you're going to have to change the blade. You need to use the deep point blade for the magnet. So make sure that before you start the actual cut process, you do change that to a deep point blade. And now we're going to add the magnet to our strong grip mat. You need a strong grip mat for this. The Nikapa one isn't really that strong, and so I'm going to change over and use the Cricut one, my older Cricut one. And it's not very strong. It's not strong enough for this magnet. This magnet's got a bit of a crease in it, the magnet sheet. And I don't know if it's the adhesive backing that's stopping it from sticking down. But regardless of that, even if it stuck down the first time, I would actually be making sure that I use masking tape. So use your brayer tool to press it down, and then also use some sticky tape, because you need to make sure you've got that extra insurance that it won't lift. If it lifts while it's cutting, or if it lifts in that machine, it may get stuck. You may ruin your machine. So make sure that you use masking tape to stick down that magnet. So the machine goes through the magnetic sheet 7 times for this. That is the default setting for a magnetic sheet of 1 mil. I'm just going to do a check of this magnetic sheet to see if it has cut all the way through, because I'm not exactly sure as to the thickness of this, because there was nothing on the packet that said how deep it is. Now, I reckon maybe it will lift, but just to be sure, I'm going to do another cut. Now that it's cut through, you can see it probably didn't need a double cut. So you could go into your material settings and change the material settings to probably 10 times the cut, because 14 times, so 7 plus 7, that was just too many for it. So even though when I pull it up, the adhesive backing comes straight off and it stays on the strong grip mat. So now it is honestly just a matter of placing that image on the front, making sure that it lines up properly. You don't have a lot of leeway with this. If you haven't lined it up properly, then that's pretty much where it's going to stay. Brayer it down so it stays down. The worst thing would be if you've made this magnet, you've put the effort into designing it, and then it just lifts straight away. But use that brayer, give it a bit of force, make sure it stays down. And then just with a pair of scissors, I'm going to tidy it up. Yours might not come out like this, but if yours does, like I said, I've got this from Shiploads. I'm not sure if it's of its thickness. So I may have cut it a couple of times too many. But I'm just going to tidy it up just with a pair of scissors, cut off all those little fray bits. But yeah, I think this looks so cute. I think it's enough to do with the song without having the direct link. And then just flip it over, and we're just going to take that masking tape off. So you can see that the Cricut's actually cut through that masking tape, which is exactly what we wanted. And last thing to do is to test and see if it actually sticks. But I really love this. You could use a holographic laminate. So there are laminates that you have got a heart print or a star print or a little wavy print or colouring in them. So you could use that instead, but I've just got the plain one. So here it is. The Love Me to My Bones magnet that we have created using print and cut, some adhesive laminate, as well as a magnet sheet. I hope you've enjoyed making this. Please post a photo of your final design in the comments below so we can see how you went with the project. And remember to like and subscribe.